So, good morning everyone. Today I will be presenting one of the conferences held by Soilless Farm Lab in Nigeria. I am Dr. Wafa Mooktar. I'm from Morocco and I hope I will share important information with you. I will try to be as simple as possible. So let's start the course. The course is about common greenhouse pests, diseases, and IPM. We will see in next slides what is IPM, what is pests, what is diseases. Actually, we will learn in 6 parts something about how to control the pests and diseases, but we need to know the sources from these pests and diseases. So in part 1, we will be doing an introduction, definitions, practices of IPM and scouting program. We will understand more this when we will get into the slides. Then we will go through level of action and the identification key we need in detecting diseases and pests. So IPM introduction is only about what does it mean IPM, what does it need for, what we need for IPM. Part 2 is about sources in greenhouses. Actually, many diseases and pests come out, pop up from anywhere. They call them outbreaks. They call them spots, which means somewhere in the greenhouse, and in the first time nothing is wrong, everything is clean, but with time there is something is going on, a problem, and especially a phytosanitary problem, which means that you have a good plant with vigor, and it happens that it starts to wilt, rot, etc. So we need to know from where it comes, because if it progresses in the whole greenhouse, or if you have any nursery project or a hydroponic project, this is a problem. So we should be used to do this. In part 3, we will talk about plant hygiene. And plant hygiene is really important because if we keep sanitation, if we keep the places clean, the equipment of greenhouse clean, and we get all the equipment needed in greenhouse, most of them, this will help much in the control and in the prevention of the pests or diseases to appear. Part 4, we'll be talking about crops pests. We should know our pests. We should know its life cycle. We should know how to diagnostic them, and we should know how to control them, how to IPM them. Then in part 5, we're going to talk about crops diseases. We should know the disease, the biocycle of disease, diagnostic the disease, and how to control the disease. In part 6, it will be about physiological. Sometimes it is not about something living. It is not about a pest. It is not about a pathogen that will attack your plant or your crop. It is about something missing. Maybe you did not water well. Maybe you did not put nitrogen enough, or you do put much more nitrogen. Sometimes it is because the system of irrigation is not working, and it happens that your plant, your crop, wilt, rots, or something wrong happened in it. Some necrosis in the leaves. So the leaves are starting to become with another color, which means it's become yellow, maybe another color. So this is maybe physiological. So we should understand and make difference between which is pest diseases and what we call biotic, and make the difference between this and the things that is abiotic, which means something physiological. And then we go through the common disorders caused by the physiological problems and how to manage them. And the final things we're gonna see is the to-do list, what to do if we want to manage those common disorders. So let's start with the first part, IPM. Definitions, practices, and scouting program, level of action, and identification key. So let's start with the IPM definition. IPM means integrated pest management, and I put it in the first line, and it's clear. So what is IPM? So it is simply combined with the 3 sentences I put down with the pictures. Those posters mean what define the IPM. Combination of practices, okay? It could be agricultural practices, it could be cultural, biological, maybe some genetics you change on your plant that will make it resistant, chemical of course, some other which are physical and mechanical. Those combination of practices, if you put them in action, put them in the real world, which means in your field, in your greenhouse, in your bank of greenhouse, those practices will control the pests or the diseases. It could be this larva that eats your leaves and defoliating all the leaves of your crops. It could be a bad pathogen, very virulent, that will attack your plants. And this will cause the diseases, the plant will wilt and die. And if you have this in all your crops, plants, or almost 50 or 40% of your plants is gone, this will be not good for your investment. So if you do this combination of practices, which are all agricultural, this will control the pests or the diseases, and it will be at economic acceptable level, which means it may not eliminate the pest or the pathogen 100%, but it will suppress it. It will reduce it at a level that will save your crop, your money, also your labor time, because it is an investment of time. Day by day you go to your greenhouse and it's work. It is a lot of work, maybe more than 6-hour work per day. And it will also save the environment and the human health, your health, because when you do these practices and you know how to combine with them, with experience, with time, you will know this, of course. This will help to reduce the amount of, for example, chemicals you are doing, and this will increase the health of the globe, of course, at least your area of plantation, and of course your health as you used to apply chemicals. So if you can combine those practices, you know how to combine them, you will reduce the amount of chemical you are applying, and this will gain on your health. So what are IPM practices? We will start with IPM practices. The IPM practices are all agricultural practices, actions, treatments applied to prevent pest disease, to attack and cause damage in your crop. So it will most often prevent. So most often agricultural practices are made in a prevention way. So before it happens that you have much more damage in your crop, if you make those practices in real, this will reduce the probability of risks that your crop is damaged by this pest or this disease. So what are these agricultural practices? They are chemical, physical, biological, cultural, mechanical, genetic. Most of those are the most important ones. So let's start with the cultural. Okay? The cultural practices are agricultural practices that you may use in your field, greenhouse. Your culture will be enough healthy to not get a disease. It may be simple practices that almost people are doing, but sometimes they are not doing it well. For example, one of the most important cultural practices is irrigation. Yes, watering. If you water your crop in a way that is good, that will be good. So the question is, what is the good way to irrigate my plants? It depends, because sometimes a plant needs to be watered from the top. However, most of the plants, if they are irrigated from the top, or they got too much watering, they may have some root diseases and especially water mold. This is why during irrigation, right now and with the technology from like maybe 10 years ago, it starts coming those drip irrigation, nano irrigation, but most often drip irrigation. And those are the best way to irrigate our crop or culture, whatever we have in greenhouse. Another cultural practices, fertilization. If you put enough, and I say enough, nitrogen, phosphorus, potash in your culture, this will help the plant to grow healthy. However, maybe if you do not put enough, which means maybe more nitrogen, okay, less phosphorus content, this may lead to something that you don't want in your culture, which means, for example, more high, tall stem in the seedling, and those called leggy plant or seedling. And once they are tall, they go down, and this makes them weak, and they cannot grow good, and sometimes, of course, and most of the time, they die. See here, most of the seedlings in a tray are dying because of this bad nutrition. Another cultural practices, which is most often used in the field, so it is not indoor things, so it is not in the greenhouse or maybe in wherever is it indoor, so we cannot talk about crop rotation, but however, it depends on the management. So if you want to do it indoor greenhouse, it is possible, but the technology depends, and it is different from field to greenhouse. And here is the example of a rotation, crop rotation in the field. What does it mean, crop rotation? Crop rotation is to rotate the crop, which means year after year or season after season. You are not going to put the same monoculture. You are not going to play on the same crop. Here is an example of the maize crop. First year, you can do the maize. Maybe the second year, you can also crop maize in your field. However, to make it more easy for your soil to get more rest from the production of maize, you may put like legume crop. Here in the 3 year, you make maybe lentil or peas. And the cover crop maybe is colza. And this it helps to manage, and for more investments, people start to do cover crops with the legume crop during the rotation time. So 2 years maize, 1 year legume, and then after the 3rd year, in the 4th year, wheat, and the 5th year, soya. And then you go back again. It's a kind of rotation. In this way, after 2 or 3 years, if you got something bad in the maize, or maybe you may have those pathogens or those pests that eat the maize or attack the maize, if you start rotating, so like splitting or changing your crop, it's more changing your crop from the maize to a legume, this pathogen or this pest will not find the maize, the crop, the good crop that it used to eat, so it will not attack and it will go away. And after 2 years or 1 year, you can put again the maize. So it's like you are playing with the pests, this condition you have, because the condition you have first is the crop. The crop, this is the most important thing, because it is called the host plant. The host plant, which means that if it's the good crop that the pests eat on it or the pathogen attack, it is most probably your crop will be damaged. So if you change year by year the crop you have, the pest or the pathogen could not attack your crop, because after a season it cannot populate, it cannot make enough number to get the damage. And we will see this next slides. Let's continue with the IPM practices. We have now genetics, for example. IPM practices may also use genetic, which means choosing resistant cultivars. It makes your seeds stronger, okay, more powerful. And here is the example of a resistant and susceptible wheat, for example. So if you choose a resistant cultivars, you will get less or maybe not rust at all. It is a disease that attacks wheat most often in the spring. And here is the example. The resistant cultivar is strong, much bigger, much immune, and the pathogen will hardly attack the wheat. However, if you choose the susceptible seeds, it will grow and it is really not resistant, and of course the pathogen will attack. Another example of agriculture practices is the biological. So let's go to it. What is biological practices? Biological practices in IPM is also called biocontrol. So wherever you heard about biocontrol is the biological practices. What is biocontrol? Biocontrol is either using biopesticides, it is actually natural products. For example, neem oil. Neem oil is much more used right now in uh, controlling pests and diseases. When you apply neem oil on the surface of leaves, this will help the plants to protect themselves. In how? It makes a layer on the leaves, and this really hardly can be a surface where the pests will lay on. Okay? And the same for the spores of the pathogen. Whatever is maybe a bacteria or a fungi. So applying neem oil is ecological. It did not cause what we call phytotoxicity, which means the plants can allow the application, there is no problem, and the plant will not die because of neem oil or to kind of frequent application of neem oil. And it will protect the plant from diseases and pests. So you can use biopesticides, or you can use what we call biocontrol agents, BCA. What are biocontrol agents? Biocontrol agents are either microorganisms that we apply when the pests attack. These microorganisms, they parasite the pest. They get into its derm cuticles and it will parasite the pest, eat the pests. Yes, there is some microorganisms that kind of eat the pests, and the pests die, and it could not grow much number on the crop you have, and this will help to save your crop. Another biocontrol agent is predator. And predator can eat a lot of pests. Your pests maybe could start damaging your crop. However, when there is a predator, okay, they will eat all the pests here, and this will save your crop. Let's see an example of this kind of predator that eating pests. Here we have the example of a biocontrol agent, one of the most important predator or natural enemies, which is called the ladybug. I think you know them. Ladybug, sometimes we know about them as lady beetles. Okay, and ladybug are used to eat aphids. And aphids are much known to be bad pests for many crops. Another IPM component is chemicals. However, chemicals right now should be your last choice. Or at least you should use them less frequently with the amount which is recommended in the labels. In every chemical package. So we have seen all about IPM practices. So let's see about scouting program. You see, before doing any practices of IPM, we need to know the scouting program. We need to do some visits. We need to do some what we call surveillance in the field or in the area of plantation. So, scouting program is actually a way to know which pest or disease you are expecting or you have in your field or greenhouse. So scouting is simply making different visits in your field greenhouse. These visits help you to monitor or observe your field for problems. You can use for this lens. Sometimes you can use also traps. It is really helpful to know how much pest or pathogen disease that causes diseases on your all planting area. Nowadays, with digitalizing everything, we can use, even in agricultural practices and IPM practices, we can monitor or observe our field using drone. This will help us to detect any problems without doing often this physical visiting in the greenhouse or field. There is actually what we call scouting pattern in the scouting program. If you need to do scouting, which means visiting the field, you should use one scouting patterns among the 3 scouting patterns you have down here. Okay? You may choose the zigzag WM scouting, going from one place, down, one place, up, one place, down, one place in the whole plantation area. And you see, if you see, this is kind of zigzag thing. Another pattern is diamond, so you can move from one places, observing every crop which may have the problems and see. So you should not just only see the pointing area, maybe around also, maybe those around area will have something wrong and you're gonna miss it. So you should keep on visiting and observing in a diamond pattern. There is another pattern called Transects, and this pattern is also used. So going from one places up to the last, for example, east places, and from the east south going to the west north, for example. So among all these patterns, scouting pattern, the zigzag pattern is the best used. So this is just kind of information. If you need to do those patterns and you want to do them, so please go for zigzag. It is really often used. So choose the best whatever. So choose the best pattern for your field or greenhouse. Be sure that your pattern covers areas with the problem. Scouting time is really important during the scouting program because you need to know your crop and you need to know the diseases and pests that often attack your crop. This is why you need to have the scouting calendar. The scouting calendar is a calendar where you have the most diseases and the most pests that attack your crop during the season you are planting. For example, powdery mildew in wheat is most often attacking wheat from March till late July, and sometimes it may appear during the fall, from September to November, and so on. So once you have all this calendar, you are prepared. And this is really one of the skills that you need to have during scouting program. And there is other skills that you need to have. And we will see them next slides. Scouting frequency is also really important in scouting program. And this will help you to know what, when, and how many pest diseases do you have. When you do not have infestation, okay, which means you do not have any diseases, in no pests, you may visit your field at least 1 day per week. So it is a weekly visiting. If you have favorable conditions, you know that the temperature you have these days and the moist around this morning or last 2 mornings is really important, and it may lead to appear some diseases or some attack of pests. So you should start doing the visit frequently, which means 2-3 days a week. When you start to have weeds infestation, even outdoor, sometimes indoor, but even outdoor, which means outside the greenhouse, around you have those weeds problem, and you know that you have sometimes the probability to have the infestation, and one day you see some places in your greenhouse with the disease, you should make more visiting, and it should be daily. So if every day, each day, use scuds. So let's see level of action. When we are talking about doing applying chemicals or applying any treatment or maybe doing some IPM practices, we need to know when we should act. This is a really important question. So it is really confused if we start just after seeing the problem. But what about doing some prevention? And what about knowing exactly my crop, okay, and my pests or my disease? This is one, as we have seen in the calendar. That is good. But what about during this time, before the, for example, the powdery attack, the powdery mildew attack, or maybe the aphids attack? So let's say that in the mid of May, we are prepared, but we should know what to do. We should see some conditions. If we have favorable conditions, and we just start to looking for those pests. If they appear, we should know every pest level, okay? And this is called every pest action level. Actually, every pest in every crop have what we call level of action or level of action. Okay? In every pest there is 3 levels. The first level, C, is the equilibrium level. At that time, there is no problem because the population density of the pest is not that important. Or maybe we have natural enemy that's still eating the pest, so the population is not that important. And you will say, okay, but we should act. No. Why? Because at the equilibrium level, the population density is less than the cost of control. So if you buy your material to control, it will cost much more than the importance of the population of your pests. So it is not a you are not doing a well economy here. However, there is another level called economic threshold level, and this one is B, okay? And it is called the action level. And at this level, the population density is really important, and it starts to make some damages. And if you know this, population number or density, you would know the action level. Because at this level, the population density damage will be actually equal or kind of much more cost of control. So you should invest and you should not be late. Do not procrastinate. You should know those skills. There is another level which is the A, and A is economic injury level. In economic injury level, actually, the cost of damage, the population is much higher, and the damage, so the defoliation or the diseases caused, is much more important. And here it is really too late. Even if you have to invest, it will be kind of late because you have much injury, you have much damages, and it's really hard to save your crop. So this is a kind of graph every pest population or even disease population have. Okay? So if you have this pest population density graph, you would know the action level. So you would know where to practice the IPM. So with expertise, with time, you will learn this. So this is just an information to make sure you know much more about IPM practices, when to act, the scouting program. So once you have those, in the IPM program, you need the identification key. So you need to know what pests or what diseases or what pathogen you have. So the identification key or ID key is a tool of identification of pests or diseases. There is different ID key actually. The one I have here is really simple and manageable. You can do it. It's really simple. Actually, this tool you have, it's like a card, okay, is the ID key. And it is used to know specific organism, okay, name it, give it a name, and classify it or group it depending on what you need of it, to classify it in a class or group. In this way, you know your disease, you know your pest, and at this time, if you know your pest, you know what kind of treatment you will apply. Let's see, for example, the insect. If you have a pest, you should ask a question. If I have an insect or I have, for example, a spider, because they are not same. An insect have 3 parts in his body: the abdomen, the thorax, and the head. Let's talk about the thorax. The thorax is the chest. In the chest of an insect, there is 1, 2, 3, and another 3 legs. So it is 6 joined legs in the chest. This is a way to know the insect. Most often the insect have wings and they have antennae, okay, and they have compound eyes. And most often they have only 2 compound eyes. However, in a spider, the spider has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 legs. The 8 legs, all of them are in the kind of abdomen or thorax, because the spider has only 2 parts in the body. Okay? So in this way, you can know if you have a spider or an insect, and with time, you can also distinguish between, for example, a whitefly, an aphis, or any other beetles or other insect that cause damages in your plant, crop, or whatever. Spiders also, if you have expertise, you may know what kind of spider you have. For diseases, you should know what we call symptoms and signs. Those symptoms and signs are so important, especially if you are in the field and you want to know your problem. And of course, you got not those maybe time or even money to diagnose in the laboratory. So you should know most about the signs and symptoms. There is some information about the ID key I want to get here, and it is diagnosis services, some extensions and applications. You can download them in your phone. For example, Transects, and this is a tool that is for commune. It is free, and most often it will stay free, and you can use them to identify the pests. You should go through Transects, see the requirements, the qualification, how to use them. So let's talk now about the outbreaks in greenhouse. So, okay, now you know the practices, almost all the practices. We're gonna see most of those practices next slide. But first, we need to know from where we have the disease and pests and how to detect these sources, which is called outbreaks. We're going to talk about the sources, okay, which may be debris, which may be infested soil, water, air, propagated materials, or habits. And we will talk about how to detect outbreaks. We should have screening tips and tricks for this, discipline, skills, and tools. And we should also know the pest disease timing, or called pest disease triangle. And we're going to see this in the next slide. So let's start about the sources of diseases and pests. The sources of diseases and pests can be the air. The air helps the spore of a pathogen to fly around and get into another healthy plant and make disease. So this is one of the sources. Air also, in terms of, for example, if we talk about wind, may also help to, or for example, help to fly the aphids. Aphids do not have wings. However, it may fly because of the wind. And if we don't have any barrier, see, the air will be sources of making aphids outbreaks. So this is really important to know, that you make sure that your area is having, for example, wind days, and if it is often, maybe probably it is really important to make those barrier. Okay, some free spores of fungi may also walk from place to place because of the air. And see, for example, here is this really nice picture of spores. Okay, it could be powdery mildew, it could be botrytis, it could be alternaria. All these are really important pathogens that attack many crops. Water is one of the most important sources of diseases and pests outbreaks. It could be just simple runoff, see, like this here. And those are really important sources of pests and diseases in your greenhouse. It may be also it will be also pumping water supplies in the irrigation system. So you should know that your water is free from pathogen or pests, or even parasites like nematodes. Propagated material is a source of most important bacteria, fungi, and nematodes. For example, if you have these cutting stalks from your places, or you can also purchase it from elsewhere, this will infect your whole plantation. Debris and infested soil. Most fungi and nematodes reside in soil, and some pathogens develop dormant stages to live in debris of previous growth, like dead stem, leaves, and roots. Another important sources of disease and pests that have sources of diseases and pests outbreak that may have most important a strategy for diseases and pests to get inside the greenhouse, to get indoor, and sometimes we don't care about, or we don't even think about it, is the habits. The habits and habits and habits. Habits is really important things. It is kind of discipline, because you think that maybe if you get inside the equipment and maybe you don't wash very well this equipment, once indoor, this equipment may have some diseases or some pests inside that will fly onto your crop, your culture, and your plant, and this will actually make the outbreak, and it will make the contamination. So maybe after 1 day, 2 days, you will have those plant diseases. Another habit that almost all of us think that it is not important, but actually it is. It is smoking or eating inside in the area of plantation. If you know, just some information, when smoking or getting something inside, maybe a source, for example, smoking is a source of viruses, and smoke or smoke product or components contains some elements that may attach viruses in it, and when you get inside the greenhouse, you can contaminate, for example, your tomato or cucumber with mosaic virus, and this is most often attached with the smoking elements. Another habit is your way to walk in the greenhouse, indoor. The way to walk, and also what is inside your feet, is what is actually down your feet, is really a source of an outbreak. Why? Simply because once outdoor, you may get something under your feet, and once you get into the greenhouse, you may enter those diseases and pests inside the greenhouse. So this is why there will be some kind of things to do to clean and sanitize the equipment, or even using boots, for example, or cleaning your feet before getting inside. And this is kind of habits you may have to get rid of these diseases or pest sources. How to detect outbreaks? You should have scouting tips and tricks. First, let's talk about discipline. You should stick to the rules. Some of the rules you should have in your head. It is like discipline. It's like sports. If you make sport every day, you will learn to do it like this. It will be easy after some time. First rule to stick on: be updated on problem. Okay? You should know your crop, you should know your pest, and whatever the problem is. For example, this season you have your neighborhood that have a culture that is attacked by a disease, so you should know this problem. Rule number 2, first come, first served. Please, whatever the disease, whatever the pest you have, do not wait till you have a big picture. Once you have something suspicious, you should act. You should start from some treatment, start maybe applying some neem oil, but it depends. You should, of course, you should be very careful. You should know your pest. You should know if this treatment will be enough and will be good for your crop too. Number 3, don't procrastinate. Now, not later. Whatever the disease, whatever the problem you have, you should act. Prevention, make trap, make visits, always doing those scouting program. Have it the calendar, make the visit in the zigzag or W pattern, and make sure do it like weekly as you do not have any problem. But if you see that you have conditions, make it frequently, and so on. Do some trap, and so on. So never procrastinate. And if you have a disease, you should start with some treatment, help with some natural enemies, free some auxiliaries or predators, those will eat your pests, and so on. Number 4, share to get back. If you have any problem, you should share it with a more expertise, maybe in the neighborhood. If you have some diagnostic laboratory, ask them. Know with whom you share, of course, your problem to get more important and consistent information about the problem. Rule number 5, have the big picture, yet have your feet in the ground, which means once you get inside your greenhouse, indoor, you should see the whole picture. You should see the whole places of the area of your plantation. Yet, do not forget to see in your feet. I mean, for example, in the entrance of the greenhouse, most often, this is where the problem starts from. Let's talk about the scouting tool. What are the tools you need for scouting? And those tools will help you to detect the outbreaks in the greenhouse. You need the hand lens. At least I think almost all of us have a digital cameras in your phone, and this will help much than you think, more than you think. Scissor, this will help to cut your samples if you need to go to share your problem with other expert neighbor or people that you know that have some information about the problem. New papers, where you will put your sample. Sometimes you can also use bags and envelope, and please try to not use plastic bag. It is really bad idea for sampling. Making, for example, if you have your plant and you have the disease on it, and you cut those leaves, or you just take all these plants and you put it on the plastic bag. You think that you do good things to go in the diagnostic lab, or your friend have expertise and he knows or she knows about the problem. But however, once in the plastic bag, the disease will not stay the same, which means there will be like some saprophytic pathogen and other pathogens that will get onto the plant, and it will get molds and it will wilt, something like this, and it will maybe rot with other pathogens, and it will mess up, and you will not know what is the problem. Traps. Traps are the most important scouting tools you can have, because you can number your population of pests, okay, especially pests, and this is really important to know when to act. Sometimes if you can afford to have the portable fridge, this is really important because it will save the simple, as I said in the last slide. If you can have an insect aspirator, those are really important. And of course, you need to record everything, almost everything, in your block notes. Scouting skills. I was talking about scouting skills in the last slides. So one of the scouting skills which are important to detect outbreak is the following. You should prepare your greenhouse. You see the pathway, I mean, from where you will start kind of the scouting, okay? And if you get this skill, every day you will have this pathway to manage from the entrance, up, then down, maybe up, then down, maybe up and down. And the same thing in the other side. In this way, you will have your places management. And if you have the place management and time management, this is really important everywhere. And as an entrepreneurship a farmer, you should have those kind of skills. It may seem like easy but really important. And if you get into this, you will know the difference. This will make really difference in your scouting program and detecting easily the outbreaks. And this will prevent you from treatments that are costly. Check up and down. Sometimes we have this kind of thinking that if we check only down or only up the leaves, it is enough, because maybe some pests like whiteflies are just down the leaf, but sometimes no. So this is kind of skills you should have. Check regularly. Check often make you more prepared for any problem or any source, any outbreak that may happen either by a disease or by a pest. And other skills are you should monitor population. You should have this ability to count all the population of pests you may have in your greenhouse, even in your field if you can. You should have an every crop eco threshold, or what we call action threshold. You remember about the graph I've showed to you in the last slide. So if you have every crop eco threshold, it is more easily when you number your population of pests. You will know when to not spray or to not make any IPM practices almost, but it is especially for treatment with chemicals. And you would know when to spray. So if you have like those information gathered in an archives or in a paper or whatever, let's say like those recording, sometimes we see that we have those reports, technical reports. If you can just make some recording in your block notes, this is really important information. This will help you to be more entrepreneurial, more proactive person, and this will help you to make the scouting skills more way important for detecting outbreaks and preventing your crop from damages. You have also this kind of skills. Record, and try to record important information. To detect outbreak, we need to know about diseases pest triangle. Okay? This pest triangle will help us to know about the plant host. The plant host is the plant that is attacked easily. If you do not have a resistant plant and you have a plant that may be susceptible or attacked easily, this is not kind of problem, but we should know how to manage. For example, we may do some analysis of plant tissue to know if the plant is healthy. The figure of plants show us that the plant is good enough and it will be hard to be attacked by a population of pathogen or pests. If you have the number of pests, this will help that you will prevent your crop from damages, and of course you will have some kind of effective cost prevention treatments. So you should also know about your pests and your disease. Okay? The environment condition is one of the parts of disease and pest triangle. If you do some analysis of, for example, of potting mixes, soil, like nutrient content, if the soil is enough fertile, water is good enough and free from pathogen, okay? There is no moist, okay? You check temperature, you check what we call relative humidity, and relative humidity is actually moisture. So whatever is in this triangle is really important for the outbreak. So if you know all this, you would know how to control, how to manage your disease or pest. So, and here we're going to talk about the plant hygiene. Before going through any crop or disease, crop diseases or crop pest problem, we need to know what are the greenhouse equipment we need and the sanitation we have to do. So for the plant hygiene, for more plant health, we need some greenhouse equipment. And the essential to have indoors are ventilation, air system, so for aeration system. Cooling is really important. So you see those places here? This is actually a cooling system which help the kind of equilibrate about the humidity, the moisture, and sometimes if it's especially hot outside, we can moderate, we can play on the cooling system. Sometimes some people use also what we call mist system or fog system, and those are depending on the crop you have of the plant or the plant you have. Irrigation system is one of the greenhouse equipments. Those irrigation or drip irrigation system are really important. So those will help you to manage watering, enough water, not too much watering, and also those avoid you to use those sprinkler watering, which are kind of not good things. Right now people know that sprinkler are not really good, if not in maybe in your garden, use it for the garden. So sprinkler are not good for watering the crop. fertilizing treatment is really important. Fertigation, sometimes when there is watering and also giving some nutrient in the plant, and those systems are sophisticated yet they are possible. So those kind of information are important. You may get more information about this in the internet, wherever you want, but those, just to know, that are the equipment of greenhouse. Mulch system is one of the important equipment in the greenhouse, especially if you are doing more sophisticated greenhouses, only with substrate, sometimes also with hydroponic system. Those systems are more often used and more used these days. For sanitation, the most important thing to know and the essential things to clean indoor are water treatment system, and there is different water treatment system. It goes from chlorination. Sometimes you may use this scent filtration or other filtration. Whatever is the filtration you may use is water treatment system. Bath in entrance. Do you remember what I have seen about the habits? So there is some places that call food bath that you are required to use sometimes in some greenhouses, some nurseries. And this bath entrance, you get inside, there is sometimes this bleach and some chemicals, and to just clean your underfeet before getting indoor. Sterilizing substrate with steam, for example. This help the seedlings and help the acclimatization, and also help the plant to be disease-free and grow in a clean substrate. Entrance room with 2 doors. This entrance room is really important because even sometimes there is some entrance room that have some places where you can change your clothes. If you can do this, this is maybe better. So entrance door helps you, whatever get inside, you should check if you do not have anything on your coat or your feet. So, and then you get inside, and this also help on the entrance of pests, which means meaning that there is hardly a way that a pest gets inside. Eliminating infected plants and debris. You see those things here in the floor of the greenhouse. You can even see maybe this one is a mulch system, but there is still some infected plants and infected fruits, and those actually should be removed. should be removed, and in this way you make the indoor clean, and this will help the sanitation. We may introduce right now some crop pests, and in this way I will let you know some of the beasts, some of the pests, their bicycle, how to diagnose them, and their control. So let's start with the first pests. Before talking about the pests, you should know that almost the insect damaging pests are classified by damage symptoms, which means that whatever the insect is, it's most often what are the damages they do in the plants. It may be an insect that are biting and chewing. And those are biting and chewing insects, so they are classified biting and chewing insects. It may be a piercing and sucking insect, and those are the piercing insects. And it may be a rasping and sucking insect. And we will see each of them as the example. Okay? So let's start with biting and chewing insects. So biting and chewing insects, those are like mines and withered leaves. They are leaf miner. The example of a leaf miner. They could be defoliated and skeletonized leaves. Example of caterpillar and looper. A caterpillar, they could be looper and armyworms. We have those examples right in this course. And they could be insects that make holes in leaves and pots. And the example is beetles and borers. So let's start with the leaf miner. A leaf miner have an important cycle. It starts with laying eggs from an adult leaf miner, and we have some time to get on the first instar larva to the third instar larva. So these larvae are the damaging problem before going to the pupa and start and transform them to an adult. So leaf miner damaging cycle is the larva time. So if we know the time of larva, we would know where, before, how to act, and what are the kind of treatment we do. And if we know about the larvae and how they look like and diagnose some of those mines and webbed leaves, we would know that this is a leaf miner. So how to diagnose? Minor symptoms and signs are especially those punctuation and minors and webs in upper surface of leaves. So up in the up of the leaves, for example, of tomato or maybe in the citrus, in an orange or whatever, you get those larvae. If you can see this one is a larva, and it is making like a tunnel. So they are called minors or webs. See, they are webbing here, and here is another web. Here is an example of a larva of a leaf miner. Okay, so and they are attacking the upper leaves. This is a way to know how this leaf miner attack. So how to control the leaf miner? There is a lot of things here, and I will make you sure to have time to get through all these kind of control. But for IPM management, I can give some examples. For example, you may hand crush or destroy larvae once you see them inside the leaves. You may destroy all infested leaves and other plant material, and this is really important. You may do some what we call tillage, ploughing, hoeing, flooding. This can help reduce the leaf miner flies and expose the pupa, which is buried. Okay, and then it will be killed with predators. Use traps and ribbons to trap the leaf miner fly. You can also use some treatments, biopesticides or BCA, and there is a lot of things to do here. Just to know that to spray chemical is especially for curative, but you should be careful on how and how much to apply. So this is only about training. There is some wasps that are used as biocontrol agents, okay, that actually attack and parasite the minor larva. Let's talk about another biting and chewing insect, which are defoliated and skeletonized leaves. For example, caterpillar, looper, and armyworms. So what about caterpillar? Caterpillar biocycle is different from armyworms to looper. However, they have almost the same days of larva time, and this is really important to know, because once you know that armyworm have 14 to 19 days of larva life, this will allow you to know the protection way to act against armyworm. Same for the looper. Looper are caterpillar that chew and bite, defoliating those leaves and attacking those, and this make really bad damages in the crops. So let's know about the looper. To diagnose looper, we have some signs and symptoms. First signs, you should find a looper on the surface of the leaves. And you should know that the caterpillar of the looper has typically what we call a looping movement. See here? When it is moving, it makes a looping movement. Okay? The larvae consume large amounts of leaves and occasionally pods and fruits. Here is the example of damages. While the moth, the fly, feeds solely on flower nectar. For armyworms, the caterpillar have typical Y-shaped on the head. See here? This is a Y kind of things on the head of the armyworm caterpillar. And it contains 4 dots which are distributed on their bodies. Okay? So this is how to know the armyworm. To diagnose armyworm, there is other signs to see, like the whitish hair and egg masses, which are really important signs during scouting. These egg masses laid under leaves, sometimes found upper surface of leaf. Okay? They are most often creamy, green or brown egg mass. So this is how to know the armyworm. Sometimes you may see some skeletonized leaves. This is also symptoms of armyworm larva. There is another thing. You can see some silk, okay, and some larvae, and you think that it is a spider, but it is larva with the silk. They do this because they need the wind, and the wind will get them to other plants to make more damages. So how to control this caterpillar? There is a lot of things to say, but please, I will just read. You can read those after the course. I will give some IPM caterpillar management. You can use crop other than cereals, like manioc. You can plant, repeal, or confuse pest plants like manioc, and there is plants that are repellent, and they are most repellent of moths, females, and this will prevent them to lay eggs on corn. You can use certified quality seed pathogens, free seeds that give vigors to plants, and this will be hardly attacked by the armyworm moths or other caterpillar. Of course, traps are really important for scouting and making decisions for treatments. Spray neem oil, this is really important by pesticide action against caterpillar, and use some wasp against them. Some wasp, here is the name, Alvides lafigma. And there is other parasitoids against caterpillar you can use that will eat or parasite the caterpillar and that will control the damages and of course the pest. Last, biting and chewing insects. Those that make holes in leaves and pods, like beetles and borers. The cycle of beetles and borers is kind of similar. You should know that there is two kinds of borer that are really important. I think you have those and you would know them. Maruca vitrata and Helicoverpa amigera. And to know those kind of borer, it is by their larva insert. And if you look those larvae, they look like armyworm, but they are not armyworm because there is no Y on the head and there is no regular kind of 4 dots on. You may see some 4 dots, but it is with experience you would make difference. And I think if you compare with the larva of borer with the larva of armyworm, you get to make the difference between them. How to diagnose them? You may diagnose them with the symptoms they make. Borer make holes on the pods, okay? Because they get inside and they make holes. See the holes? It attacks different pulses, and I think those pulses are made also in the sub-Saharan, much often also in Nigeria. Pig and pea, chickpea, cowpea, gram soybean, groundnuts, and African yam bean. The borer have a characteristic egg structure. And if you have these cutting skills, you may know how it looks like the egg of borer. How to control a borer? There is a lot of things to do as an IPM for borer management. You can use resistant tolerant varieties. There is some against Maruca. Be sure to use pheromone traps and help yourself by disrupting debris, crop residues, weeds, and other alternate hosts. There is some important biological control agents like trichogramma. If you have this picture here, this is a larva of Maruca, and up those fungi that parasite the Maruca, the larva of Maruca is called trichogramma. Okay, this is a fungi that parasites, and this is kind of biocontrol action. We will continue on the insect diagnosis and IPM, talking about piercing and sucking insect and grasping and sucking insect in the coming classes. Thank you.